Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Valen, and this is LittleTiles, a mod by CreativeMD. Today I'm going to be taking you a little bit through a peek of what this mod is capable of. There's going to be multiple videos on this, so be sure to stick around for those. Today I'm going to be covering the hammer, the chisel, and the bag. Now before I get started with this, I feel I should mention that Dan Shear, your patronage is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for that. And so we'll begin with the little hammer. This mod itself is similar to Chisels and Bits, but it is basically God mode in a way. Now, I am not in creative right now, but that is a possibility. Anyway, little hammer. The tools, most of the tools in LittleTiles are basically going to consist primarily of iron and lapis. Now, it's more creative than anything else. You've got your little bag, which is made a bunch of iron around a hammer, and your little chisel, which is made in similar way as well. Now, there are multiple ways. There's so much to cover in this mod, but I'm going to try and break it up so it's easiest for people to understand what they want to understand, because there's so much to cover. So yes, Chisels and Bits, right? Wrong. This is all LittleTiles work, stuff like that was done in a matter of probably a minute. Now you're probably thinking, wait a minute, Chisel and Bits, you're kind of doing all this. Take you quite a while to get like cylinders and circles and stuff like that, unless you've got like templates already set up. And no, you don't need to do that. This has so many options, it's ridiculous. Not to say that it replaces Chisels and Bits, because that mod has its own benefits, and it is compatible with it in many ways. There are some downfalls with that, but we're not really going to get into that today. We're going to keep it simple. So, the little hammer, what does it do? It's similar to a chisel in Chisel and Bits. It basically will allow you to start taking out little bits of whatever you want from the ground in this case. Now, something else you should know. Control Z will undo, and Control Y will redo, just like you would in like a document, or most cases in a lot of programs out there. Control Z will undo, Control Y will redo things. So you do have a lot of stuff set up by default. Now there are some other key bindings. We might get into a few of those, but not too many. But if you want to access the configurability of this, obviously, if I want, I could change this sandblock into something a little bit more creative, and it will no longer be a sandblock. It'll actually stay where it is. But if I wanted to actually do a lot more at once, right now I'm just doing one bit at a time, which is one like 16-bit block. Anyway, let's hit the letter C. By default, this is what it's set up for. You can change what you want to actually break out and the size of it. For instance, right now we're doing 1 cube at a time. We can increase this to 2 cubes at a time. So you can see now my little bounding box is much higher. I can do just a little notch there. I can do all 4 at a time, and it's a 2x2 area. So if I were to hit C again, I can change it up to 8, and therefore do a big chunk out of this. Of course, I can undo as before, and if you go up to a full 16, you can do the entire block. Just got to get that bounding box to line up. Boop, and there you go. You can take out the entire block at a time. Now, you don't have to take the entire block out at a time. Remember how in like Chisels and Bits or a similar mod, you might actually have to, well, kind of chisel the entire block one part at a time. Well, in this case, you don't. That's where the little bag comes in. Now, I will go further into detail on the hammer, but it's important that you have a little bag with you, or else you're going to have difficulty in storing any of the bits that you start making. Now, of course, I showed you the recipe already, but if you right-click with it, you now have an inventory. You can actually drop blocks, complete or otherwise, inside of this. So I could just take this back out. Now, I can't put it back in here. I have to drop it in the top here. Now, you also have a dye storage. Depending upon the dye that you insert, it will give you a different combination of black, your cyan, magenta, and yellow. And I would recommend maybe a lapis is a good start. That will get you at least 3 of these, and then toss in some dandelion yellows or something. Or cocoa beans, that's good, as well as cooked up green cactus. That's definitely going to get you a good selection of these. And you just keep on dumping in a whole bunch of this, and this will allow you to later color any of these items that you therefore start making. Now you can have multiple bags if you really want, but you can have up to 24 different block types in here, and then up to a stack's worth of each one. It's quite comprehensive. So this is going to be very key for that. Yes, you can just take things in, you can drop them back out. And because I've been chiseling bitting on this block so much, you can see that there is like some really strange, funky stuff going on here. Well, not to worry, we can fix that. As before, I open the bag, I can take out some blocks, I can put it back in at the top, I can put this down. There we go. That's only if you have some of the glitches. You don't have to have that. Also, a little wrench might also come in handy for that. This is just a little side tool to help fix some glitches. If you start seeing something that doesn't look quite right, try whacking it with the wrench and it might fix that. Now let's get back to the little hammer. Now when I left off, hitting C, it brings up this menu again. We had it at 16. Let's bring it back down to, let's say, 2. No, let's bring it at 1. We have other options besides cubes. We can do bars. Let's bring that back down to 1 as well. A bar is just basically a length. If you look, it goes 1 pixel wide, the entire length of it. And of course, as before, we can change that to different dimensions and so on. So it will actually pierce the entire block, crossing over and so on. Now, there are other options as well. You've got your plane, which, as before, I'm taking 2 pixels out at a time because that's what it's set at. I could do 4 if I want, and so on. I could also do drag box. Now, drag box allows me to select a section and then drag and eliminate a large area. Now, you can see this little bounding box here allows me to take out a whole lot of stuff if I really want to. In this case, I'm just going to take out that little bit. Now, if I wanted, I could make it hollow as well. So if I go from here down to here, you can see now it kind of takes out this little hollow area and leaves the center untouched. Pretty darn neat stuff. Now, if I so desire, I can increase that, of course, to be much bigger. And that, because it was 2 blocks, is not going to do much. But there we go. You can see it now chunks out sections. And it allows me to just kind of cut into it in all sorts of different ways. If I were to go with drag sphere, let's keep that one with 2 blocks for now. We're going to start at the top here, go all the way down to the bottom. Whoop, there we go. It now has this kind of outer section going on here that, wait, what is going on here? It's because it cut out the center in a 2-block area. Now, if I wanted to, I could change that further. Could make it like 8, and then it's barely going to be even recognizable. Most likely at the inside, it's just going to cut out the entirety of it. But basically, I just cut out the entire inside. I could always increase it to 16 if I really wanted to. It doesn't even have to be hollow. It can be normal if you want. And this is all just removal. I'm removing a sphere from one point to the other. So that's what's going on with that. Now, if I hit C again, we can continue on with drag cylinder, and this allows you some different facings as well. Now, if I were to choose here and then go down to here, you can see it took a chunk out of the middle. If I wanted to change that up, undo, I can then hit this and I can choose the facing to be X instead, which is going to definitely change how that goes, as you can see. And then, of course, you can always change it again to Z, and in the same location, it's going to switch it yet again. So therefore, you can have a lot of variety with how you do this. Now, I'm just showing you some basic examples of how this works. So what else is there? Well, there's drag wall. I think that might be, no, there's a few others. All right, drag wall. We're going to go with 2 on this one. We're going to leave it on Y in this case. And if I go from here to here, let's actually keep it there. You can see it actually kind of made this zigzag across. Now let's go from top to bottom. And then it cuts the entire block in half. It's pretty darn cool. I mean, your options for this are really interesting with how you can kind of manipulate how you want things to look. You can make this look like it's some kind of cracked piece of sand or whatever with very little effort. In this place. I mean, imagine trying to do this 1 bit at a time. Not to say you couldn't if you didn't want to, but it just can get a little bit tedious, and this has so many different shortcuts. Now let's continue on with drag line. This one here is a little bit more interesting. Let's actually have it go way over here. Now, yes, it did cut into that because that's where I had it, but it basically has a sliced line from one point to another. Let's undo that. You'll better understand if I go like this. You can see now it just kind of cut down through there. It's just basically a line that's only a couple pixels wide. So you can always change the different settings on these things too. Let's go with drag slice. Drag slice is a little bit more interesting. I can have this go down here and you can see it actually does like a ramp shape in this area for what it is. If I wanted to, I could do from here to here, and then hit the arrow key and it will change where it goes. It's difficult to see with the hammer because you're kind of out here with it. I mean, if I'm hitting the arrow key, it doesn't visualize the area that it kind of chops for you. It does if you're placing things, which I believe should take us to the last thing here, which is not going to be the hammer. It's going to be the chisel. Chisel is what you use to actually place things. So you're not just breaking things up anymore. Now in this case, I've kind of wrecked this block so many different times. I'm going to make it a block. I'm going to do all 16, and I'm going to simply just chunk this out of the way. For now, let's get into the little chisel. Same thing, you hit C and you can bring up this different information here. You can change the different colors. This is going to use some of the basically your colors that you have stored up in here. You can therefore color the block you want. If I want, I have a box shape of glass. You can choose here from your inventory. Currently it has sand is what I kind of broke recently. But you can choose different things in here. You can do a search. Glass, there you go. I could look for Podzol, P-O-D, etc. And you can find all sorts of things in your inventory that way. You can choose the different sizes and shapes that you want. You can make it hollow or not. Let's do a couple. Let's make this a slightly pink glass block. So let's first, it's best if you have something to work up against. In this case, I'm choosing here. I just right click. I drag it, and pow, I've got this done and made. Now, if you look, it said it's box. It's not hollow, so it's actually a full-size block. If I undo that and I make it hollow, it will actually act slightly different. I'm just using glass in this case because if you look, you can actually see the inside of the glass there. So let's use this little hammer and change this to cube with a couple blocks. And then I can just cut from here to here, and there's a little bit of an opening. Let's go a little bit further and see if I can... Actually, I realize I want it to be a bit more. Let's make it a plane, so I can just chop this entire thing down. There we go. And it should allow me to... Yep, there we go. I'm now inside this, basically, little glass crate. Very simple and easy. And of course, as mentioned, it is kind of pink. So it's... really pretty that way. Now, of course, you can change it to whatever colors you want, depending upon your sliders and stuff. It will use up the dyes as you start placing these things. If you use the standard white, it won't use any of the dyes. But if you break it again with the hammer and turn it back into bits in your bag, you get the dyes back. So it's perfectly recyclable stuff. Really, really good to have a whole bunch on hand. This can hold a lot. To give an example, let's grab some lapis here. I can throw in some lapis, which will give me some of the cyan, magenta, and the black. If I throw this in, just look how much is in here. 64%, right? Boop, didn't give very much. Still at 67 now. And it gave a little bit of those. So it's just a bit of each one. Now, let's continue on with the little chisel. If I were to look here, I could also do spheres as well. Let's choose a different block that's a little bit more visible and something that I have a lot of. Stones, which I've got plenty here. So if I choose here, and I come on down like this, I could probably go, oop, there we are. One giant egg, stone egg, done and done. Now, if I look in my inventory, it is actually hollow. You can, now I'm not in creative, you can actually break these little sections. It kind of divides each one up into different sections. You can see inside that this egg is actually hollow. And those bits that I just broke by hand went back into my bag, which is pretty cool. If you want to store different structures or move them, you're not going to be breaking them like you would with chisel and bits. You're going to actually be making kind of like templates, breaking the actual bits up using the hammer, and then just replacing it with the templates and making them in here, which I'll be covering in a different episode. But for now, just know that that is one of the ways that you would move some kind of large structure like this. So, continuing on with this, we've got other things. We've got cylinders. If you look here, hollow or not, you can choose how big. I'm just going to keep it at 2 blocks, and we can have it go out to, let's have it go over here. There we are. Very simple. You can change the facing on it as well by clicking down here as before. Nothing really too fancy. Got your walls as you would before. Just do this. You can make yourself a wall. You can make it diagonal if you want. So we can go over to here. Pretty darn cool. It's really, really easy. It's like painting with chisels and bits is what this really is. So then we can go with a line. As I mentioned before, we can actually like draw lines to connect support beams or create chains or do whatever we want. Just make all sorts of interesting stuff. And it's just really, really good. So then, of course, the slice. This is where it gets a little bit weird. The slice is actually, if you look here, this is where I was saying before. It's actually a slant. There isn't bits involved in this. And if you use your arrow keys, you can change the facings that you want it to be. So let's switch this upside down. There we go. And then, oops, right click. And it now is a slant. You can see that there is a bounding box to it, several in fact, but it will allow me to just walk right up. Pretty neat. So if I do here to here, and let's rotate this. There we go. I now have this large slanting portion that I could just walk right up. It's pretty darn cool. It's just really, really neat. All the different things that you can do with this. And of course, that's the different types that you have. And the most common is probably going to be like your box, where you just start making something rather large. Let's start with there. And then I can use, as I did before, this on a plane to just kind of chop it out. Oh, that's going to make a big mess. So let's change that from a plane to a cube. And we can just kind of poke in to see what we've got. We've got a little bit down in here. You can see that it is currently open. And I don't have anything set up for this to be dragged. You can do drag box. Actually, let's make that 2. There we go. And then I can drag from here to there. Oops, I didn't make it deep enough because I didn't choose the bottom corner. But there you go. I just made this little box. It's a little too narrow for me to actually fit in. But it's pretty darn neat how you can actually work with all this stuff and make these creations so simply and easily with all the different things. Now, there are, of course, a few other options that you have with these. I'm not going to go over all the key bindings, like I said, but I will go over a few more. Specifically, Control-C will definitely bring up something of different interest. In this case, it says sand. That's what you saw before it said up here. Now, if I scroll down, let's choose stone. And it is not checkmarked any, and it is not checkmarked metadata. Therefore, if I try breaking this stuff, let's see, drag box. I don't want it hollow. Let's keep it with 4. And I can have this go down to here, and I should break out this entire amount. But I did not. Instead, I only took out the stone. That is where Control-C will actually make a difference. If you choose this, then it will allow you to break any of this. Therefore, boop, I took out everything. Control-Z to undo. But Control-C allows you to filter out specific items. It keeps on defaulting back to sand for some reason. But and of course, you can always use metadata to further specify a certain type of stone if there is multiple kinds. But I could feasibly, hold on, Control-C, use this for obsidian instead. And then I can just go down like this, only take out the obsidian and so on. It's really, really cool. Very unique and wonderful idea. Now with the chisel, it's going to be very different. There are multiple options. Default mode can only be placed if there is space for all tiles in the aimed block. So if I try to place some stone like this, it will only place actually that was a really poor choice. Let me put this in an area where there isn't any stone. From here to there. You can see it did not overlap any of these things. So it did not have any space for it, but it did place those there. That is how that one works in that default mode. Fill mode. Now, of course, the 16 represents how many bits in an area. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 16 is your typical for what we've got here. But if we choose fill mode, it will try to fill in the tiles if they don't fit. So if I go back through here, you can see it actually fills in all of the gaps. It fills everything in between. It didn't replace any of them. It just filled any of the empty space. Control-Z to undo, Control-C to open this back up. All mode. Can place structures, can only be placed if there is space for all tiles. And this is mostly for structures. Once again, I can do this and nothing happens. This is a structure option, which is something to do with the bench down there and placing entire structures instead of just like these little ones. Now Control C to, again, overwrite mode. This one you use at your own risk. So if I use this up here and kind of go into this pot, boop, there we go. I hit Control Z and oh, it's ruined my creations. This one, like I said, you want to use it at your own risk. It will destroy blocks as you place them. It overwrites them. And that's pretty much it. So Control C to continue on. We've got replace mode. We'll only place the tiles at the overlapping space. Cannot remove structured tiles. And structure tiles are things that have been placed specifically as a structure. But we'll only place the tiles at an overlapping space. So let's try again. Oh, wait, what is going on here? That's because I am currently, there we go, replacing blocks. Pretty darn cool at this point. So if you have something you're like, no, I don't want it all wood. I want it to be stone. Let's switch it out to stone. You're going to have to basically try and find a space that you can work with here. But you can see that anything that I've got is being replaced with stone at this point. So it's pretty darn neat that it can do all that. Control Z should be able to undo most of that. I've made an absolute mess of it, and you could probably, as before, use your wrench to recognize where things are if some things have gone missing or whatnot. This will fix any kind of visual issues you might have. There we go. And there is no Control C for the wrench. It's just like a bug fix tool, at least at this point. I can show you more about it later. But in here, you probably want to keep it on default or fill mode in most cases, because you never really can be sure. Now, in this case, you can always just replace all of these things as you wanted to. Like this, I could change this from stone to grass. Then I could change it to replace mode. And then I could go from here to here. There we go. And that's fixed. And then I would go back and change the colors of that as well. I could always do this one to here, replace all of the grass in that entire area. There we go. And I fix them a little bit at a time. That's how you would replace that. Obviously, Control Z was not working in that case, but it works in most cases. This is why default and fill mode are usually what people end up wanting. Fill mode is probably my favorite, as it will allow you to do a lot more with what you have. There we go. This is just the entry-level stuff, folks. There is so much more to cover in this mod. So I hope you enjoyed. If so, be sure to give a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you guys on Twitch most nights around 10 p.m. Till next time. See ya.